Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel and my corner of chaos. I want to talk about the books that I read in October because there were some disappointments, there were some happy accidents, and some interesting reads. So let's get to it. I read about 8 books in October, and I say about because I normally try to not roll books over into the next month, but I have been trying to climb the magic mountain for at least 6 weeks now. And honestly, if you are reading that, take a break every once in a while because it's needed. That's an experience, isn't it? So I didn't quite finish everything, and there's one book that I technically didn't finish in October, but let's just ignore that. I read 8 books in total last month, including one library book and one ebook. I've been a bit in an audiobook slump, I have to say. I even paused my Audible and I didn't realize that it's been unpaused and I still haven't felt the need to or the desire to listen to an audiobook. So if you know of a good audiobook, please let me know. I need to get out of that slump. I've I don't even know what I've been listening to while doing my chores, but not a book, and that's a bit of a disappointment. Either way, I still got around to 8 books in total. I'm going to do it in no particular order, by the way, because I may have made extensive notes, but that's a little bit too much for me. So I'm just going to not do it in order. So, starting with The Quiet Room by Terry Miles. This is the sequel to Rabbits, which I read for book club last year, and it was one of my favorite surprises of the year. It was described as a techno horror, which isn't exactly something I was familiar with before I was introduced to rabbits. But I have to say that it was really one of my favorite books of the year. Um, Basically, Rabbits is a secret game that takes place in the real world, and once the door has been opened, you have to go out and search for clues, which are things like weird coincidences, synchronicities, or things that are off. You remember them differently, but suddenly it's changed. And you kind of follow those clues in the real world, and the winner wins something. It's not completely clear what you win. There's been a few iterations before you start in Rabbits, and it's not entirely clear what happens at the end. In fact, when we pick up in the quiet room, it's unsure where we even are. And I have to say, when it comes to sequels, you often get disappointed. But with this, I truly think that he did an amazing job with keeping up with the tone of voice, the way the characters are portrayed. The game itself was really interesting, which I was a bit worried about, I'll admit. And I can't wait for the third and last book in the series. As far as I know, there's another one in the works, but I'm unsure when that will be released. I couldn't find any news on it anyway. But if you are just as addicted to this world as I am, you could also start listening to the podcast. I have that on my to do list for the next month. So I'll keep you posted, I guess. It was an objectively good book. The pacing was great. The characters were reasonably fleshed out. The storyline wasn't as predictable as you would like it to be sometimes. If you haven't heard of techno horror before, I would recommend Rabbits to start, and then The Quiet Room because it's an amusing world to be in. I don't mind it at all. And while we're on the topics of rabbits, anyway, I also read the sequel to Bunny, We Love You, Bunny by Mona Awad. This is not really a new story. You know what happens, except that now you get to see it from a different point of view. And I've heard that some people thought it was redundant because it really isn't a sequel. It's like, is there even a word for it if it takes place in the exact same time? And just because it's a different perspective doesn't mean that everyone agrees that it adds something to the story. I didn't mind it. I know that for some people it took away a little bit of the magic of Bunny. The madness was sort of explained, but I feel like the explanation holds well within the story itself. If it is even an explanation at all, because I am not very much wiser, and I kind of feel like at some points maybe about even anticipated some of the commentary that she probably felt would come from this particular sequel. That there were a lot more layers to it than you might expect from a sequel, and I feel like I might have to reread both of them a little bit closer together so I can actually see and feel what happens in the brains of all the people involved in this story. If you don't want the absolute magic and all the questions that you had in Bunny to be answered, which I don't really feel like they are, but it's not a necessary read. You're not. Mm, I don't think you're missing anything important, especially if this is going to be it. If maybe if there's a third book, who knows? But I don't know, if you don't want to feel bad, just don't read it. It's not like you're not missing out, right? But to me, it was a nice addition to. I think I was surprised at a few elements, quite a few actually. The only regret, well, regret, the only commentary I really have is that I wish it would have been split up a little bit differently, because it does become a little bit redundant in different ways. Not in the sense that you're reading a story from a different perspective, but more within the story itself. I think I would have divided the story up in a different way. But if that's really all that I have to say, like I said, I think I'm actually going to reread both of them in quicker succession so that I can enjoy it better. Like I said, if you think that Bunny was well on its own, then don't pick it up. But otherwise, I don't know, it might surprise you. A book that surprised me was The Pumpkin Spice Cafe by Laurie Gilmore. Now, hear me out, all right? I am not someone who enjoys smut. Uh, it's just not something that adds value to a story to me personally. So when I picked this up, I went for the cozy, wholesome vibes. Only when I started reading it did I realize that, in fact, Laurie Gilmore, hmm, everything about this feels Gilmore Girls. I mean, from the town and its characters to the main characters of this book, they both have their issues naturally, and uh, I was expecting the romance part, but it's just I don't need the smut, and I skipped it to be completely honest. If I know going into a story that there's going to be smut, it's different. But for this, I don't know. It felt like being slapped in the face because Gilmore Girls is it's Gilmore Girls. I grew up with the show, and it's one of my comfort shows, and to put smut in that world, even though it's not, I know it's not that world, but you know what I mean? It just, it wasn't sitting right with me. I could do without those scenes. And there was no way I could have known from the cover. And I feel like it doesn't really give it away in any description either. I was warned by other people, and then I, did a little bit of research. But I feel like a cover like this should not be something that is on a book that includes quite explicit smut, in my opinion, because it's there at all. And if you know the story about icebreakers and the chaos that has caused, you probably get where I'm coming from. But yeah, I loved the story. I love being in the world of Gilmore Girls, and I wish I had the desire to pick up the rest of this series, because it's a great world. Even the little map at the beginning, it's just it's adorable, right? Unfortunately, because I really just don't. I'm not interested in the smut part. I wanted wholesome. I wanted cozy. I wanted autumn. So those scenes felt very out of place for me. Um, in my defense, that doesn't mean I don't want smut at all, or that I feel like you shouldn't read it. It's just in this book in particular, it felt wrong to me. But you'll see, I have something in the works about that anyway. I'll show you how much I don't enjoy smut by reading smut, and I'll that's another story to be continued. When Among Crows by Veronica Roth is a book that I was introduced to by Gary Can Read. I was warned that it would be a little bit short, and it's absolutely true. I fell in love with this world and these characters instantly. I don't know how she did it, but it's masterfully written, and one of those books that show you that less is so much more. In fact, it will make you want more because it's less. Um, in opposition to some of the popular books that are going around right now that are really bad at with scenes that might not be necessary or that don't really make sense, at least not in the book that you're at if it's a series. But when Among Crows, it's an urban fantasy. We follow Ayla and Demeter, and Demeter is a hunter and Ala is a Zamora, if I'm correct. Thing is, they'll have to work together to fix the problem that we have in this book. I really don't want to say anything about the story at all. If there is one book that I read this month that I would love for you to pick up, it's When Among Crows. It's short, it's sweet, and there's a second book already out. I'm going to try my very best to squeeze it into the coming month because I need to know what's going on in this world. What I can tell you is that it draws heavily from Slavic folklore, which is something I am not familiar with at all. So if anything, it has introduced me to a corner of the book world that I would love to dive into a little bit further. There's just so much that this book does that I have been missing in a lot of the contemporary books that I've been reading this year, which is just realistic characters and random, actually natural banter, a great chemistry, and I don't know, it just all fits, you know. If you're looking for a seasonal book that is a little bit of what you know, but a lot more interesting than you might expect, especially if you're looking at the length of it, When Among Crows, Veronica Roth. I also read The Coin by Yasmin Zaher. I don't have a copy anymore. I read the ebook, and it was one of the Jack Edwards, his book club picks for Inklings. And I thought, why not? It's short. It's not very sweet. It's quite the experience. We follow an unnamed Palestinian woman who has made it to New York and is living the good life, really. But it's not really going quite as well inside her mind. There's a huge juxtaposition between her life as it is and where she comes from, and how the situation still is at that moment in time. And she slowly but surely unravels, and you get to experience that through her mind. It's not an easy read, even though it's not that long. If you're open to it, you can learn a lot, not just from the state of the world, but what it's like to be to feel that mental pressure of being privileged. But are you really? And I think it was masterfully written, especially considering that it was a debut book. But it's not a cozy read. It's not going to leave you feeling all happy and jolly. It's quite it's really an experience. So if you do pick it up, be warned, it's no pumpkin spice cafe. I also read Folklore by Zoe Gilbert, which was a book that I got from the library. Now, it was one of those books that only had those little scribbles from other authors on the back, but it looked so different from what you see in bookstores these days. I thought, why not just give it a go? It looks pretty, it must be good. And I'm not saying it wasn't, but for one, it was short stories, which I am very bad at. I am not good at reading short stories. A novella is already a little bit short for my taste. Like When Among Crows is it's so good, but it's so short, you know. So actual short stories, I suck at them. But in this case, I also feel like either the author should have got a few of the stories. There's two things I think would have been good for the book. One would have been to cut away a few of the stories, so there would have been more room for set stories that remain to be explored, because they just felt too scrunched up, and it didn't really make me feel like I learned anything. And if there's something I know about folk tales, which is what this book is based on, folk tales and fairy tales, they just kind of left me with more questions than any answers at all. Even though the stories take place in the same town, they all take place in the same magical town, and the characters do kind of make cameos here and there. It's just too short. So either the story should have been a few of the stories should have been cut, or there should have just been more pages. The book should have just been more thicker, actually. So I don't know. It left me feeling unsatisfied. But keep in mind that I'm not very used to reading short stories. I don't particularly enjoy them. So if you do, the concept of folk by Zoe Gilbert is great. I just felt a bit unsatisfied, but that could just be me. And lastly, I want to talk just a little tiny bit about the Cherrypies book club picks, because I did make a video about those separately, and I really don't have a lot to say about the first one, which was Five Nights at Freddy's by Scott Cawthon. The full title is actually Fazbear Frights #1 Into the Pit. It is also short stories. This has three short stories. And we follow, let me cheat real quick, Oswald, Sarah, and Millie. Oswald is the one who goes into the pit. Sarah wants to be beautiful, and Millie just wants to disappear. That's the subjects that each of these stories tackles. I'm not the target audience. I didn't play the games. I just knew a little bit about the author. It wasn't for me. It wasn't. I did. It's not. I mean, I did enjoy myself objectively. It's not badly written. The pacing is decent. The language for the bracket that this book is written for is also great. It's just that I feel like the concept that the games work on that isn't really as effective in book form. The scare factor, right? I didn't really feel the build up of tension at that moment where you're supposed to be scared because something pops out of the screen at you. I, I, I don't feel like it worked in this book, at least. So for me, it wasn't my favorite of the month. If you're getting back into reading, for example, this one would be great, especially if you're familiar with the games and you like them. It's a good read. There's a hair on my nose. And to close it off, we have Under the Skin by Michel Faber. I always say Michael, I have to stop doing that. That was the second Cherrypies book club pick that we read for October. And this was I have no words. The layers of this book are genius. I was a bit spoiled. I understood a little bit more about the main character before I went into it. And I'm unsure whether I should say it, but I felt like it helped me understand some of the layers that you will most definitely miss if you're not in the know. In short, Michel Faber's Under the Skin is one of those books where maybe knowing what is going to happen in the story is beneficial, because who has the time to read a book twice? So, and in this case, I really think that if you know a little bit more about the plot and Iserly in specific, and why is she driving around Scotland picking up bulky male big hitchhikers, it will help you understand the story a lot better. There's so many layers that I don't want to get into because I don't want you to know what's going on. I would read the book. There's also a movie, so you could maybe dip your toe in the story with the movie first. But honestly, the biggest surprise of the month. And I want to read more of this author. I think he's very witty, and the way the story unfolds, it's gonna get under your skin. The title is so well done, and I'm gonna be thinking about this one for quite a while. And that was everything I read in October. I'm not mad about it, even if some of them weren't really my taste, or maybe I wasn't exactly the target audience. I will always find something interesting in a book, and I am looking forward to continuing some of these series once the book comes out. I'll keep you up to date on how that goes. So stay tuned, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.